A very good morning. Many thanks for joining us on yet another edition of Political Spectrum. We're coming to you live on Spectrum Television. Hello from me. I am Raymond Ita. The countdown to the 2023 election continues. It's 5 days to go before Nigerians finally head out to the polls to elect a new leader for the country, as well as representatives at the upper and lower chambers of the National Assemblies, respectively. Well, arguably, the 2023 elections and the build-up to it has been one of the most anticipated in the annals of the nation's political history, coupled with the events that has characterized the build-up to the polls in the last few days, weeks, as well as months. Well, beginning from the respective primaries of the political parties last year, the course of campaigning, which flagged off sometime in October 2022, and the intricacies that has bedeviled most of this campaign with verbal words and attacks, tantrums being thrown by political parties against each other, also mirroring the activities of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in terms of its preparedness level for the polls, and the concerns that it has raised as well about the possibility of not just holding the elections, but ensuring free, fair, and credible polls, which Nigerians have mandated them to deliver on. Well, it's now 5 days to go before we finally find out how the course of the nation's history could be altered by the end of those polls. Well, we'll come to some issues later on in the program as we try to ascertain the readiness level of Nigerians in the lead up to the polls, and most importantly, of course, which way the elections will likely tilt come February 25. But as usual, we begin the program with our regular roundup of the day's biggest political news stories and events. And we'll start off with the news that President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to Nigerians to remain patient as his administration takes appropriate action to mitigate the hardships occasioned by the controversial Naira swap policy. Now, the policy described by some as hasty, it was of course designed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to limit cash holding and vote buying ahead of the general elections. Now, however, the policy has since given rise to a Naira scarcity and violent protests across the country. Now, according to a statement by the Senior Special Assistant in Media and Publicity to the President, Garba Shehu, President Buhari made the plea to shore up support for the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, where the president thanked Nigerians for electing him to be president for 2 terms and urged them to vote without fear or favor. Meanwhile, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has filed a lawsuit against President Muhammadu Buhari over the alleged unlawful directive banning the use of the old 500 and 1,000 Naira banknotes, which they said are contrary to the interim injunction granted by the Supreme Court that the old 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes remain legal tender. But joining the suit as defendants are the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, as well as the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. The Supreme Court in the case initially brought by 3 states, but later increased to 10, recently held that the old banknotes remain legal tender, pending the determination of a motion on notice fixed for February 22nd. Now, the deadline for the swap of the old notes had expired on February 10, according to the Central Bank of Nigeria. However, President Buhari, in a nationwide broadcast last week, directed the CBN to recirculate only the old 200 Naira banknotes, thereby overruling the Supreme Court and banning the use of the old 500 and 1,000 Naira notes in the country. Now, in the suit, SERAP asked the court for a declaration that President Buhari's directive banning the use of the 500 and 1,000 Naira notes is a fundamental breach of Section 287, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, as well as the constitutional oath of office he took, and therefore declared his directive unconstitutional, unlawful, null and void. While SERAP is also seeking an order of interim injunction restraining President Buhari, the CBN, and the AGF Abubakar Malami from further enforcing the presidential directive banning the old notes. pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice filed in the suit. And moving on, the All Progressives Congress APC has called on the Attorney General of the Federation and the Governor, the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN), to respect the Supreme Court's order of interim injunction on the Naira note redesign. The APC National Chairman Abdullahi Adamu said the appeal was part of a resolution reached during an emergency meeting between the party's governors and members of its National Working Committee in Abuja. Adamu, who spoke to newsmen at the end of the closed-door meeting, said the meeting also urged the president to intervene in resolving issues caused by the new Naira note redesign and the cashless economy policy. Recall that the Supreme Court had in the ruling granted an interim injunction that the CBN and the federal government should suspend the implementation of the February 10 deadline for the expiration of the legal tender status of the old 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes. Now, this, it said, should be pending until the hearing and determination of the suit before it, which is slated, of course, for Wednesday, February 22nd. Now, meanwhile, President Buhari had, however, on February 16 announced that only the old 200 Naira notes would remain valid until April 10, while the old 500 and 1,000 Naira notes had lost their legal tender status, contrary to the ruling of the Apex Court. Now let's go to more electoral matters now. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has assured that the February 25 presidential and National Assembly polls will hold nationwide, despite the cash crunch and protest in some parts of the country. Now, following the redesign of the 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes by the CBN, Nigerians have been experiencing difficulty having access to the new notes. Now, with this development, there have been fears that the general elections might be postponed or suffer some glitches. However, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has allayed those fears, saying the commission is working closely with the CBN and security agencies to ensure the polls go ahead as planned. Well, now, let's move on. With less than 1 week to the end of the campaigns for the February 25 presidential and National Assembly elections, INEC has revealed that it is compiling the names of candidates and political parties who have been engaged in verbal attacks during the campaigns. INEC National Commissioner and Chairman of its Committee on Information and Voter Education, Festus Okoye, in an interview with newsmen, described the situation as worrisome, noting that the National Peace Committee, headed by the former head of state Abdulsalami Abubakar, and some civil society organizations were also monitoring the violations. Okoye stressed that the use of abusive language by some political parties, candidates and officials, as well as supporters during the campaigns, was in contravention of Section 92 of the Electoral Act. Well, he noted that the Commission would not hesitate to prosecute those found guilty after investigation and arrest by appropriate security agencies. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says only members of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, are the only authorized election officers expected to handle the bimodal voter authentication system BVAS during the election. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu stated this during his visits to the training center of the presiding officers and assistant presiding officers 1, 2 and 3 in Abuja. Yakubu said the Commission cannot rely on its workforce alone for the conduct of a credible and peaceful election, hence the need for the mobilization of the NYSC members. The INEC chairman therefore tasked the core members to be loyal to Nigeria and as well as Nigerians, and not to the political parties and their candidates. Meanwhile, ahead of the February 25 presidential and National Assembly elections, the Nigeria Immigration Service, NIS, has redeployed 30 state controllers and 11 assistant controller generals across the country. But this was disclosed in a statement issued by the Immigration Public Relations Officer, Tony Akuneme. Now, according to the NIS spokesman, the states affected were mainly those who bordered Nigeria with neighboring countries. Well, that includes Yobe, Adamawa, Sokoto, Lagos, Oyo, Zamfara, as well as Cross River State. Other states getting new controllers includes Gombe, Kaduna, Kano, Plateau, Bauchi, the FCT Abuja, Nasarawa, Edo, Bayelsa, Rivers, Anambra, as well as Enugu State. Now, the posting approved by the Controller General of Immigration, Isha Jere Idris, was signed by the Deputy Controller General, Human Resources, Usman Babangida. Noting that all the deployments are with immediate effect, the NIS spokesman said the Controller General had placed a very high premium on the critical role of its personnel in the success of the general elections. Well, those are the day's biggest news stories making the rounds as we gear up to the conduct of the February 25 polls. But the one big question on the lips of Nigerians in the lead up to this election is whether or not the polls would go ahead as scheduled. Well, confirmation from INEC has quashed all the rumors about the possibility of having the elections cancelled, especially in the face of the biting hardships Nigerians have had to go through, occasioned by the narrow redesign policy. Also, previous concerns raised by INEC in areas of logistics concern have equally been doused with assurances from the likes of the NNPCL as well as the Central Bank of Nigeria that logistic concerns would be addressed in the lead up to the polls. Well, we've been told INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu is expected to meet with Godwin Emefiele, his CBN counterpart, later tomorrow, where issues of logistics are likely to be addressed. And this has reinforced INEC's earlier statement that the elections will go ahead as planned, in spite of calls by some quarters to have it postponed, and the summary evidence of the hardship occasioned on Nigerians by the recent policies of the government. How true are these concerns, and will they mitigate the conduct of the polls? These are the issues we'll look to address when we come back from this break that beckons. Burning Stories is up next on Political Spectrum. Don't go anywhere.
Hello Nigerians. God has once again brought us to another season of general elections across the country. I am therefore calling on all of you to exercise your franchise in a peaceful atmosphere. I am calling on specifically our traditional rulers, religious leaders, and parents to warn their followers and wards alike to not allow themselves to be used by a few to foment trouble. I want to assure you that the government has taken adequate security measures to allow everyone to come out and cast their votes. I am therefore appealing to everyone to give them the necessary support. Fellow Nigerians, I want to use this opportunity to once again thank you for electing me to be your president on 2 occasions. I am not a contestant in this election, but my party, the All Progressive Congress, has a candidate in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. As I mentioned before, Tinubu is a true believer in Nigeria, who loves the people and the development of our country. I am calling on all of you to vote Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is reliable, and I trust he will build on our achievements. Finally, I want to once again assure you that I am fully aware of the current hardship you are facing as a result of some policies of the government which are meant to bring overall improvement to the country. I am appealing to you to exercise further patience as we take appropriate measures to ease these hardships. God willing, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Fellow Nigerians, God has once again brought us to another season of general elections across the country. I am therefore calling on all of you to exercise your franchise in a peaceful atmosphere. I am calling on specifically our traditional rulers, religious leaders, and parents to warn their followers and wards alike to not allow themselves to be used by a few to foment trouble. I want to assure you that the government has taken adequate security measures to allow everyone to come out and cast their votes. I am therefore appealing to everyone to give them the necessary support. Fellow Nigerians, I want to use this opportunity to once again thank you for electing me to be your president on 2 occasions. I am not a contestant in this election, but my party, the All Progressive Congress, has a candidate in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. As I mentioned before, Tinubu is a true believer in Nigeria, who loves the people and the development of our country. I am calling on all of you to vote Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He is reliable, and I trust he will build on our achievements. Finally, I want to once again assure you that I am fully aware of the current hardship you are facing as a result of some policies of the government which are meant to bring overall improvement to the country. I am appealing to you to exercise further patience as we take appropriate measures to ease these hardships. God willing, there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. From the clip we've just seen, President Buhari in a video address released by a senior special assistant on media, Garba Shehu, over the weekend, where, amongst other things, President Buhari has urged Nigerians to remain patient with his administration, especially in the biting face of the hardship occasioned on them by recent policies of the government, not least the narrow redesign policy orchestrated by the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as the burgeoning issues around the scarcity of fuel and the overall concerns as to whether or not it would hamper the conduct of the 2023 elections. But more critically, Mr. President appeared to be canvassing for support for the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the lead up to the polls. Now, whether this settles the dust around speculations that Mr. President is not so comfortable with the ambition of Bola Ahmed Tinubu to become president after the February 25 polls leaves much to be desired. In fact, some heavy-leaded infighting within the All Progressives Congress APC, with some persons, notably Governor Nasser El-Rufai of Kaduna State, speculating that there are some fifth columnists allegedly working with certain moles within the All Progressives Congress to truncate the presidential ambition of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and to sway President Buhari's language And as a matter of fact, even in the course of the campaigns he has personally attended, but we've equally seen footages where President Buhari has told Nigerians to vote for any candidate when he said he will not allow any political party or candidate. So some political analysts and observers have said Mr. giving so much away as to where his heart actually lies with respect to his position as president. So it would not be unbecoming of him back in May 2022. So it would have been surprising for Mr. President to go to look at the build-up to Saturday's showdown, beginning from the All Progressives Congress presidential primaries, as we saw last year, which eventually led place. There were insinuations about the possibility of a consensus. Buhari would have wanted the option of a consensus candidate as opposed to having a primaries where someone would be elected at the end of the day. From the insinuations and the reports we got, although we have to clarify from our position that a lot of them were largely unconfirmed, we had heard that President Buhari had 3 candidates or 3 aspirants as a then in mind to actually succeeding on the platform of the APC. One of them was a regular visitor to Aso Rock, and quite surprisingly, former President Goodluck Jonathan was mooted to have been a favored aspirant of President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, at that stage, there were equally reports of Jonathan defecting formally to the APC, although we never saw anything to that effect. Well, perhaps it was pending the acceptance of the bigwigs within the APC to accept President Buhari's choice or mooted choice of having former President Goodluck now by the bigwigs within the APC. The president favored the choice of into the ring hook, line and sinker in terms of contesting for the APC presidential ticket, which, by the way, he lost, coming third just behind former Minister of Transportation and former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi, and of course behind the eventual winner, Asiwaju himself. Well, it was equally mooted that after his second choice of VP Osibanjo did not hold water, the president seemed to have also turned his sight to another card he was keeping close to his chest. Again, these are reports that are still largely unconfirmed. The choice of Godwin Emefiele, the Central Bank of Nigeria's governor, who eventually threw his heart into the ring as well to contest for the APC's presidential ticket. Well, we know the whole drama that surrounded the aspiration of Godwin Emefiele, with several persons, even within the APC, kicking against his impending candidacy by claiming that being the governor of the nation's #1 financial institution, he should have resigned from his position first as CBN governor before throwing his heart into the ring for the nation's top job. Well, neither of that happened. Instead, Emefiele's chances were scuttled by court cases brought against him on the premise that he was sponsoring and financing terror groups in the country. Well, while all of these are yet to be proven by any competent court in the country, because he appears to have been absolved of all those charges, with the inability of the DSS and several anti-graft agencies to arrest him in the lead up to the end of the year. Well, that aspiration eventually cooled off, and at the end of the primaries, it didn't turn out to be what most Nigerians had actually expected. We expected some sort of serious battle between all the contestants. And by the way, there were so many of them who had indicated interest to run for president. The big shots, of course, apart from the 3 we earlier mentioned, the likes of former Kwara State Governor Godswill Akpabio equally threw his heart into the ring. But the surprises we saw at the end of that primaries was that a bulk of the presidential aspirants eventually stood down their respective aspirations in favor of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who eventually went on to clinch the party's ticket to contest for this post. Well, at that time, and in the face of the assurances that he had given that he will not interfere whatsoever with the electoral process starting from his party, Mr. President had to give way to the emergence of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the party's standard bearer. And since then, Perhaps you would say it was expected of Mr. President to equally support the aspirations of the party standard bearer in the lead up to the polls. Again, we're following up bit by bit so we can arrive at the president's conclusion, courtesy of the video we heard a short while ago, which saw Mr. President still ask Nigerians to support Bola Ahmed Tinubu to be his successor. Again, studying his body language and the comments that he has made in the time past, so we can ascertain for a fact whether Mr. President truly means what he said when he's asked for Nigerians to support the candidature of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, or if Mr. President is just speaking from both sides of his mouth. Again, the aftermath of the presidential primaries, or the lead up to it, by the way, during the height of the APC's build up to the primaries, when it was mooted that Mr. President was more in favor of adopting a consensus candidate as opposed to having a direct or an indirect primaries, Bola Ahmed Tinubu came out with scathing words about Mr. President when he claimed, and I believe that was around the time the now famous or infamous, as you see it, Emile Khan slogan eventually came out to the open space, when he claimed it was the turn of the Yorubas, and not just the Yorubas' turn, but his turn to become president. And he equally premised this argument on the fact that he had aided, or in his own words, made President Buhari to become president back in 2015. Of course, it was a claim that was immediately rubbished and dismissed, not just by Mr. President himself, but a good number of his aides. Garba Shehu Lai Mohammed are just one of those who came out publicly to denounce the comments made by Tinubu when he claimed that he made President Buhari to become president. Well, some have said perhaps in 2014, following the famous merger between the parties that came to form what we have today as the All Progressives Congress, there appeared to have been a gentleman agreement between the leaders of the parties who would come together for that merger, beginning with the CPC, who had President Buhari. As of then, it wasn't the president, of course. Bola Tinubu came with his ACN. There was ABGA, spearheaded by the late Dim Chukwuemeka Ojukwu, and a faction of the People's Democratic Party, then known as the New PDP, who were of course headed by former Senate President Bukola Saraki, came to form what we know today as the All Progressives Congress. And perhaps after the casting of lots, it fell on President Muhammadu Buhari to clinch the new APC's ticket to battle with the then PDP under the direction and leadership of former President Goodluck Jonathan for the 2015 election. Of course, as we know, it is no more news that Buhari had won that post by a landslide and eventually went on to clinch a return ticket in 2019 for a second term. So on the premise of that, would we say that Bola Ahmed Tinubu was largely instrumental to President Buhari becoming president, and so requesting for the same favor to be shown to him now that he feels it's his turn to actually clinch the nation's top job? Well, political observers and analysts and even insiders within the APC would say perhaps, yes, there was some sort of agreement on ground that after President Buhari takes his turn in 2014, and by extension the events that he gets it at that time, do the same thing in 2019, he would allow Bola Ahmed Tinubu to clinch the party's ticket in 2023. Well, that has happened. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as of today, is the presidential candidate of the APC. But as far as clinching the presidential election is concerned, perhaps that's something left for Bola Ahmed Tinubu to factor in for himself without the help of President Muhammadu Buhari. And it explains why, in a video that has gone viral, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, claimed that as far as policies of the APC administration is concerned, and those of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Shetima's presidential campaign team, they were largely inseparable. So just breaking this down, because of the question posed across to Mr. Lai Mohammed about the policies of the APC administration and whether they were intertwined with the aspirations of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was seeking to become president come February 25. Well, he said they were actually inseparable. But it was funny to see Mr. Lai Mohammed claim it seems if Bola Ahmed Tinubu does have answers to the burgeoning problems that Nigerians are facing as a country, well, perhaps he would have shared some of these ideas with President Muhammadu Buhari, which is why he perhaps said the ambitions of Tinubu and the policies of the current APC administration are actually inseparable. But when it goes to the elections, then the Bola Ahmed Tinubu's presidential campaign team has a lot of work to do to win over the vote and support of Nigerians at that election. Perhaps now we have an understanding of why Mr. President said he will not allow anyone to mobilize resources to truncate the electoral process. He wants to go down in history as a president who had delivered free, fair, and credible polls. So it begs the question why those within the APC feel that Mr. President is not supporting the ambition of Bola Ahmed Tinubu to become president. Again, making reference to comments made by the likes of Governor Nasser El-Rufai of Kaduna, who had said some fifth columnists or most are perhaps working with the opposition to truncate the APC's chances at the elections. Not just Nasser El-Rufai. What about Professor Issei Shagay, who is also a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress? He specifically, or perhaps we have to say, was the first on national TV to mention Godwin Emefiele as a mole within the APC, allegedly working with other political parties to truncate the chances of the APCs. Of course, these are all largely unverified claims, but then these are politicking and statements that likely accompany electoral processes in the build-up to the elections. Well, while we are factoring this in, is that, as was said earlier on in our lead-up, it's just 5 days to go before the presidential election does come up. And we know political parties are winding down their preparations to the election. But one major concern here that is actually coming has been whether or not most parties would get the needed support that they want in the lead up to the polls, especially in the face of the recent incidents that have engulfed the country in recent times. Nigerians have had to make do with rising cases of insecurity across the country. And not just the fact that people have been kidnapped in SWAT and incredible ransoms being requested for and eventually paid to have most persons freed. Killings across the country, most of them have been mooted to be religious killings or having a religious background to them, as much as some leaders or governors in the states where these incidents have happened have tried to play down on the fact that most of these killings have any religious background to them. The jury is still out on that, of course. The attacks on INEC facilities in some parts of the country, especially in the southeast. And of course, we know most of these attacks have been largely traced to so-called unknown gunmen and faceless men who have said they will not allow elections to take place in the southeastern parts of the country. All of these concerns, again, have been hampered seriously by the Naira redesign policy, which is the icing on the cake as far as the concerns raised as to whether the elections will hold or not is concerned. Well, most Nigerians feel the fact that INEC has said, do not worry, elections will go on as scheduled, means there is nothing truly to worry about. But is that truly the case? Well, with the hardship Nigerians are facing, there are already huge concerns that the 93 million plus number of names that we saw captured on INEC's voter register may largely decrease. And what are the reasons for this? How many Nigerians will likely head to the polls in the face of the biting hardship that they are going through at the moment? Of course, we know most persons have to travel from one location to the other to be able to cast their vote. And the penultimate days to February 25 is the ample opportunity most Nigerians would have to travel from one state to the other, primarily to get to their respective polling units so they could cast their vote. Well, if you do not have money to facilitate this movement, and again, the fact that there's a scarcity of premium motor spirit, otherwise known as petrol, then the issue of movement from Nigerians from one place to the other looks like it could be likely hampered. And that will lead to large-scale disenfranchisement on the part of Nigerians who have been clamoring to cast their vote. What about the state of PVC collection? Yes, we know INEC had, of course, expanded the window to afford most Nigerians a chance to collect their PVCs for those of them who did not. Well, we know that the extended grace period eventually expired as well on February 5th precisely. And with that, we're still hearing complaints that there were a number of PVCs largely uncollected, and INEC has said it will not extend the deadline again. And with just 5 days to go before the election, we all know it's impossible for INEC to begin asking for people to come collect their PVCs. One thing we do not know for a fact yet is just how many PVCs have been largely uncollected. So we do not know for now how many persons will likely not vote on election day. Yes, INEC has said there were appreciable rates of success with the collection of PVCs, but we equally know that there are a good number of them yet to be collected. So what necessitated all of this? And what about the complaints raised by persons who said, look, we actually registered for this post, but we've gone to INEC offices and designated centers to collect these PVCs, but have not been able to do so. So what's going to happen to that number of persons? What about the bigger concerns of vote trading and vote buying, where it's been reported that a good number of PVCs are unaccounted for because INEC staffs have reportedly colluded with some political parties to sell off people's PVCs? Or there are those who reported also said have had their PVCs, being sold, deliberately. So people go out there and in exchange for 10,000, 5,000 or 2,000 naira have actually sold up their PVCs rather, or their VINs, which authenticates the validity of your permanent voter cards. And INEC has raised the question about why people go around buying VIN numbers. Of course, it's in the hope that INEC servers, courtesy of the bimodal verification system, the Viva system, which would of course be used to authenticate the validity of votes in this year's election, which is something we've not seen in elections gone by, is because some persons feel they can actually hack into INEC servers. And I'll just draw your attention quickly to the news making the rounds last week that some persons attempted to hack into INEC servers. Well, INEC says there's no cause for alarm. Its systems are safe, and they claim they're 3 steps ahead of those who have been trying to hack into its servers. So all of these concerns will lead to people worrying as to whether or not INEC can conduct free, fair and credible polls. And again, with the other instances I've given, whether the polls should be postponed or not. Well, we all agree the biggest concern right now on ground is the scarcity of cash. Well, INEC has said it will have a meeting tomorrow with the Central Bank of Nigeria where most of the issues surrounding logistics will be sorted out. So INEC doesn't have concerns as far as conducting this election is concerned. But what about the people, those who will cast their vote? Is there a chance that voter apathy will likely creep in? Like I said, if persons who do not have cash or money available to them, will they want to be interested in the polls? Well, these are the issues, of course, we intended to bring up as we lead up to the election, but there are other matters of grave consequence. We've already talked about President Buhari seemingly endorsing Bola Ahmed Tinubu as he has done with the few campaigns he has joined the APC for in the last few weeks in the lead up to the polls. What about other political parties? Well, one man who appears to be enjoying widespread support apparently on the part of Nigerians, and in quotes, those who claim to be in the trenches, is the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, who seemed to have formally split the Integrity Group, or the so-called G5 governors, are finally coming out to tell us who they will likely support in the 2023 polls. Governor Samuel Atom of Benue State formally declared last week for Peter Obi, while Nyesom Wike has more or less told Nigerians that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the man to beat at the elections. We'll be going to Benue State, where Gordon Udobert, a regular contributor to Political Spectrum, will be on standby to give us feelers about the formal declaration of support for the presidential ambition of Bola Ahmed Tinubu by Governor Samuel Atom of Benue State, who has said he will stand by Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party ahead of the February 25 polls. What does this mean in way of projections for the elections in 5 days' time? We'll find out when we come back. Do stay with us.
Nigerian police anyone allowed by cross them. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian Police Force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Every day, we bring you up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigerian.
From issues on politics,
Hello, Nigerians. Remain committed.
Security.
Education, health,
Lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobum and Uyai Anyeken
every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. Don't forget, you can always connect with us on StarTimes DTH Channel 421, and don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. And equally, do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website. Just search spectrumtv.ng. Or should you wish to be a part of the program this morning, feel free to reach out to us on the numbers displayed on your screen. We'll love to hear from you, but we'd like to advise as well that when you do call in, ensure that your comments and your contributions are as moderate as possible. We'd love to hear from you as we count down to the elections on February 25. What are your expectations generally on the outcome of the polls? With all the explanations we've given so far from all sides, especially with all eyes fixated on the electoral umpire, that's INEC, as far as its preparations for the polls are concerned, do we have an overbearing faith in the capacity and ability of INEC to deliver on credible elections? And what about the hardships Nigerians are going through at the moment? Would you say it's enough to call for a postponement of the election? Opinion seems to be largely divided on whether INEC should call for a postponement of the polls in the face of what Nigerians are going through at the moment. But it's keen to understand that it's not the first time elections have been postponed or cancelled in the nation's history. As far as cancellation goes, the last we can actually remember was over 30 years ago, dating back to 1993. A polls that was widely adjudged to be the freest and the fairest ever in the nation's history, won by the late Moshood Abiola, who of course was on the platform of the SDP. And that election, of course, was truncated following a cancellation by the then military head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, who had actually called for another conduct of that polls, but that didn't happen because he eventually stepped aside, and the interim government of Ernest Shonekan, who should have conducted another election, was equally thrown aside by the coup d'etat that was organized by the then chief of staff to Babangida, the late General Sani Abacha. But that's as far as the cancellation of polls go. But what about postponing of elections? In 2015, the February 14 initial date set aside for the election was actually postponed by the then INEC, headed by Professor Atahiru Jega. And the concerns there were owing to insecurity. We'll come to that later. It looks like we have a reaction. Let's get to entertain this call. Hello, good morning to you. Hello, good morning. All right, we seem to have lost touch with that. Feel free to rejoin us again if you can. Don't forget you can do so by reaching out to us on the numbers displayed on the screen. And don't forget to keep, otherwise we might have to let you off when you do join us. All right, hello.
I'm calling from Bahrain in Akwa Ibom State. Criminal justice has done what the state government cannot do. He has brought us back to Carico, put these people out, so that things are so difficult. Even
for joining us, if I can deduce in summary what friends to the carry go mantra that he claims some politics in the lead up to the polls, the spokesman for the All Progressives president over his stance on the narrow redesign policy, and this had was that Atiku had appealed to the Central Bank of Nigeria to allow, especially since the February 10 deadline given by the CBN had actually allowed. He has actually had a rethink of it and has said the CBN should actually, go through a review of the entire policy again. And the APC is saying perhaps with the election just around the corner, it looks like incidents on ground do not favor Mr. Atiku and his chances of coming out victorious at the polls. Well, we know, of course, these are things that likely come up in the build-up to the polls. And quite interestingly, INEC has claimed that it is having to, sniffing compiling names of candidates and parties who have been using verbal abuses in the build-up to the polls. I'll come back to that point shortly. We get another reaction. Hello, good morning. All right, looks like we lost that call. Feel free to reach us back again, but don't forget to equally go to our social media platforms by leaving us messages. We'll love to read from you even after the program. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yes, welcome to Political Spectrum. What's your name and where are you joining us from?
Yeah, my name is Abdul. I'm calling you from Kano.
Abdul joining us from Kano. Welcome, Abdul. Go ahead. What's your reaction?
Director. Yeah, I'm talking from Kano in the sense of the cash scarcity in the country. It thinks it's very hard for every individual of the country. Please, we are begging you people to help us talk to the government because the poor masses are suffering. Oh, them, they are rich people. Not all this thing is not reaching to them. They are not feeling it. The money we are talking about, they have already have the money. They print it inside their house. Even the next 10 years, they are not feeling. So we are begging them. We are not a slave to our country. We are the indigenous of the country. We suffer getting this money. After getting the money, they're telling us that we are not using the money. Your money is in your hand, you and your family cannot feed. Have we committed any offense from these people? Why these people are maltreating us? Are they not servicing another country? They are entering another country. Not like their why is different. And their grandchildren, they are packing money for their grandchildren. You know, our leaders here, they are just like the mad person who carry load at back. Is the load when carry. The load when carry, you didn't use and finish. He's still adding another more load. That's how them be. They are packing this money, they are packing it, they are continuing packing the money. What are they using the money for? They are already commit a slave to the money. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Abdul, for joining us all the way from Kano. We do appreciate your concerns as well as your contribution, making an appeal to the government. Well, basically, that's the only thing Nigerians can do at this point. It's quite unfortunate that in the lead up to the elections, when we should be focusing on the manifestos of these political parties and their candidates and focus on issue-based campaigning in terms of what they hope to do by the time we give them their mandate to lead us for another 4 or a subsequent 8 years when another election does come around in 2027. It has unfortunately been hindered massively by the Naira redesign policy. We've got another reaction, by the way. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you. Welcome to Political Spectrum. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
My name is Okolo Goodluck and I'm calling from Enugu.
All right, joining us from Enugu. Thanks for joining us. Please go ahead.
I just want to say about the issue of this new Naira note.
All right, go on.
And it's making things hard here. Like when you want to buy something, they will begin to tell you that they need cash, not transfer. Before you buy things, you go around before you buy things.
Device so we can get you clearly. All right, I think we got a wraps of what the caller there had to say, but I'd like to advise for other intending callers, when you do join us, please we advise you to turn down the volume on your TV so we can actually get you clearly, because the holdback would not allow for a seamless conversation and for the benefit of those watching at home. So the concerns, as we've seen it from the calls coming in from Nigerians, is that the hardship they are facing with the Naira scarcity is appalling. But the question we're asking, would this deter you from going to the polls to cast your vote? Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling from Adia State.
Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir. I don't think INEC wants the election to hold.
Why would you say so?
I said I don't think INEC wants the election to hold by virtue of what the CBN is doing. If actually they want us to make use of the money, they should make available 5 naira notes, 10 naira notes, 20 naira, 50 naira, and 100 naira notes. So that when we go to the bank to withdraw, this money will be available. Based on what we are told, that 500 naira, 1,000 naira is being held by the politicians. We agree with the federal government. But none of the politicians hold 5 naira, 10 naira, 20 naira. So why not make this lower denomination available for the people to have them? So that when we go to bank, we'll be able to withdraw it. There is equally network problem. So when all these are going on, how do you expect a hungry man to go to the pools, standing under the sun, saying he's going to cast his vote? This is an indirect way of telling people don't go and vote. It's an indirect way of discouraging the people. So my humble submission is that even if the CBN has looked down on the Supreme Court, though it's a...
Okay, seem to
so
have...
that people...
All right. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all the same for joining in. Though we did have some technical glitches with the last part of your reaction, but your concerns are quite clear. It's calling on the CBN to ensure wide circulation of the lower denominations to allow for a seamless transaction and access to cash for Nigerians. The concern has been raised by others as well in the lead up to the fracas we're having with the scarcity of the cash. And perhaps that informed the choice of President Buhari to order for a circulation of the 200 naira notes, which some would say should be easy to access compared to the 500 and 1,000 naira notes that have reportedly been hoarded by politicians for the purpose of truncating the electoral process. Let's chip in another reaction. Hello, good morning to you.
Hello.
Yes, good morning. Welcome to Political Spectrum. What's your name and where are you calling us from?
Okay, my name is Stanley. I'm calling you from Kaduna.
Stanley joining us from Kaduna. Go ahead, Stanley. What's your reaction?
Okay, the issue of whether the situation we're in will make us not to go and vote. This thing we're in now will energize us the more to go and vote. It will give us more strength to go and vote, to select the man after God's own heart. You see, these politicians have cheated us a lot. All these governors that are flying to Supreme Court, saying that Buhari has disobeyed the court. Where were these governors? When this government disobeyed the court order that said that they should release Adasuki? Where were the same governors when the same court said they should release Nnamdi Kanu? Where were the same people, these governors, when the court said they should release Zazaki? You see, these governors are not doing these things they are doing because of the poor masses. I'm in Kaduna, and if I tell you the atrocities of governor of Kaduna State, in Kaduna State, you will not agree. All the markets in Kaduna State have been demolished by the governor of Kaduna State. The houses of people have been demolished in Kaduna State. And when you want to talk, they ask you to go to court because you know you cannot obey the court. What are we talking about? See, if the governors have packed the money, as with the poor masses, I think they have already packed the money, they will not be going to court. It is because the money they packed is not enough to do what they want to do during the election. I am begging Nigerians, let us have just hope. Let us just endure. We have been suffering since 2014 till today. Let us endure just these few days. By the grace of God, when we do this election, then we know the way to go. But God, I'm praying that God will give us the mind and heart to give us the man after his own heart, not the man we like. The billion band has been going up and down. When we elect these people, they will gather this money by themselves. They are not throwing all these millions just to throw it for nothing's sake. If we vote them in, they will get their monies before they think of any poor man. God bless Nigeria, and thank you, sir, for giving me the chance to talk.
Thank you very much, Stanley, as well, for joining us all the way from Kaduna. Reechoing sentiment equally shared by many others. Some have posited that even in the face of the hardship Nigerians are going through because of this policy, it looks like a lot of persons do agree with the long-term benefits that the Naira redesign policy seems to serve. Apart from the economic desirables as pushing Nigeria towards adopting a cashless economy and perhaps ensuring that our currency stands shoulder to shoulder with other global currencies and other financial benefits accrued to redesigning the Naira. Some would say the immediate benefit that this policy hoped to serve was to truncate the chances of those who wanted to explore negatively this election by actually pervading the negative vices of vote buying and vote trading, which some would say has already been, actively permeated in the last few weeks and months leading up to this election. Hello, good morning to you. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jojai John Tokwe, coming from Lagos.
Thank you for joining us, Tokwe. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this currency of change, we don't even understand for this our country. Because in my area here, in Bariga here, we use 2,000 naira to collected 5,000 naira. Why we use
we have money, we cannot spend it.
Yes, we have money, we cannot spend it. And what is the essence of collecting Nigeria money? It's better we be using Germany money. Yeah, Charlie, the new president, the new king of England. Because if they bring dollar to Nigeria, we will use Nigeria money to change it. Now we are not using dollar to change money. We are using Naira to change Naira. Is it fair?
We are not voting.
For me, I'm not praying that this vote should just come true, because it's better Jonathan to come and do our president in this country, because he's the one that he's the one I know that can do it better. Because all this APC, I don't even understand. God will not come from heaven to this country to come and do anything. It's we. Our change belongs in our hands. Because whenever you on the Saturday we come now, you will hear say this one is they share 50,000, they share kiniko for this man, they share it for this man. Is that the solution? No, it's not the solution. We will hear that another person is coming tomorrow now. Ogami, this country, I don't know. God cannot come from heaven to do anything. It's only we that will do everything. We need change in this country, and the change stands from we, black Nigerians. So I rest my case.
All right, thank you very much, Tokwe, for joining us all the way from Lagos. Your reactions are well appreciated. More or less will echo the sentiments of others, but quite unfortunately, Goodluck Jonathan is not on the ballot for the election on the platform of any political party. We only factored into the argument in the build-up to today's program when it was mooted initially that he was a favored consensus candidate of President Buhari in the All Progressives Congress, an idea that was quashed immediately by the bigwigs of the APC, which eventually paved the way for Bola Ahmed Tinubu's candidacy as the flag bearer of the party. We did say as much as President Buhari has canvassed for support for Mr. Tinubu in the lead up to this post, does it mean from his body language that he is wholeheartedly supporting him? These are claims that others have raised, including the likes of Nasser El-Rufai, who believes the president's body language doesn't actually suggest that he wants Bola Tinubu to emerge successfully at the end of the post, which is just 5 days away. We'll get a few more of your reactions, of course, but that will be when we come back from this break in the final lap of Political Spectrum this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
day, we bring you up-to-date information on topical issues affecting the common Nigeria.
From issues on politics,
Hello, Nigerians. I remain committed.
security,
education, health,
lifestyle, and so much more. Join Janice Kobrum and Uyai Aniaken
every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Rise and Shine Daily, exclusive on Spectrum Television.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
As Nigeria prepares for the general elections holding from 25th February 2023, broadcasters are enjoined to make ethical reportage their watchword. All political programs shall observe the provisions of the Nigeria Broadcasting Code and other extant laws relating to broadcasting. All broadcasting stations must adhere to the principles of pluralism and ensure equitable airtime to all political parties or views. All political programs shall adhere to the general principles of legality, decency, and truthfulness. For the avoidance of doubt, the broadcast of a political campaign, jingle, announcement, or any other form of partisan party identification or symbol ends not later than 24 hours before polling day. Hate speech is prohibited. Be professional. NBC, your right to quality broadcasting. Announcer Management.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Political Spectrum on Spectrum Television. The countdown to Nigeria's presidential election and National Assembly polls slated for February 25, make that this Saturday, of course, continues. And the course of the program has been inundated with calls from different parts of the country. The Nigerians, of course, complaining about the hardship occasioned on them by the Naira redesign policy. Expectedly, opinion is largely divided on whether this policy was necessary or not. Well, most agree it would aid in largely reducing negative vices that usually accompany the conduct of elections, such as votes buying and votes trading, although some have said a good number of these incidents have already occurred or been reported. If we can draw our minds back to comments made by the Northern Elders Forum, who said vote buying has been widespread in the northern parts of the country because most persons wish to disenfranchise a good number of the northern votes, where many persons agree the elections would likely be won, and understandably so. 4 of the leading parties going into February 25 presidential polls seem to have widespread support shared across the north. There are 2 northern candidates of this number: Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, Rabiu Kwankwaso of the NNPP, who, by the way, has been mooted to be getting set to defect or turn over his support to Atiku Abubakar of the PDP later in the week. How true this report is, we cannot independently verify yet, but there are mooted reports that Rabiu Kwankwaso is likely to declare for Atiku Abubakar in the days leading up to the polls. We've tried to reach out to spokespersons from the NNPP, but they have declined to comment on this issue yet. But then, Rabiu Kwankwaso himself does enjoy widespread support from across the north. Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress may be a Southerner, but by virtue of his religious background as a Muslim, does enjoy widespread support in the north. Well, that leaves the, in quotes, outsider, Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, whom by virtue of the rallies and the campaigns that we've seen from his party in the last few weeks, especially in the north, also appears to enjoy widespread support from the northerners, meaning the showdown for February 25 is really, really going to be one for the ages. So how well are Nigerians prepared to head to the ballot? Let's chip in a final set of reactions and calls before we wrap it up on the program this morning. Just reach out to us on the numbers displayed on your screen. Hello and good morning to you.
Hello.
Yes, good morning. Welcome to Political Spectrum. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm Miss Lawrence.
All right, can you do us a favor? Just turn down the volume on your listening device, please.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
All right, much better. Go ahead.
Yeah, this issue of money scarcity in the town is really affecting Enugu people. I don't know the reason why somebody will go to a place like First Bank headquarters and they will say there is no money from morning till night, keeping their customers. I don't know where this country is heading to.
All right, your concerns are well noted. Thank you very much indeed for reaching out to us. A concerned caller joining us from Enugu and complaining about the scarcity of cash. And by the way, we've just had some reports trickling in, but we're yet to independently verify that the protests across the country owing to the scarcity of the Naira has resulted in the attack and the burning down of an unnamed bank in Ogun State. As we said, we're still trying to verify which bank has been reportedly attacked and the true story surrounding the nature of this attack. Until we can do so, we cannot say any further, but that's the news just trickling in. Again, say that attacks on banks are more or less criminal activities and cannot be separated from guided by this, with some governors equally coming out to say, please do not protest to an extent of destroying properties, which would lead to a cancellation or postponing of the elections. If most Nigerians are saying they want the polls to go ahead, well, this protest may likely mitigate the exercise. Hello, good morning to you. All right, feel free to join us again. But just to wrap up on a bulk of what we've said so far, the elections are building up and INEC has said it is ready to host the polls tomorrow. They're expected to meet with the CBN to formalize issues around logistics and concerns for the polls. They have assured Nigerians the elections will hold, so disregard any information or reports that INEC is not ready to conduct the election. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, name and location.
I'm calling from Buhari, from Delta.
All right, please turn down the volume. Turn down the volume on your device, please.
Okay.
All right, if you've done that, you can quickly go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I'm talking concerning the issue of.
All right, I'm sorry. We're going to have to let you go. We might have to let you go now. As we said, when you call in, please turn down the volume on your listening device. Otherwise, we will just have to cut you off. Please do well to understand with us when you're joining by turning down the volume on your device so we can hear you clearly. But I'm sorry, that's the much we can take as far as the reactions on the program is concerned, because we have to draw the curtains here. The countdown to the election continues. Let's keep faith with the electoral umpire INEC, who have assured that regardless of the skirmishes they have faced or witnessed in the last few months and weeks leading up to this weekend's polls, they seem ready to hold the elections. President Buhari himself, from the video released by Garba Shehu, the senior special assistant to the president, has urged Nigerians to be patient with his administration, even in the face of the biting hardship necessitated by the government policies. Doesn't look like Mr. President is keen on further giving room to pleas for the policy to be dealt with respect to the Supreme Court ruling that said the 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes remain legal tenders. As far as the Supreme Court's involvement in this matter is concerned, we can only wait until Wednesday, the 22nd of February, 3 days to the polls, for a Supreme Court's hearing. Will we see a further adjournment of the case? Or will the Supreme Court deliver a final verdict on this issue? But it's easier said than done If the presidency is yet to comply with the February 8th ruling up until now, what does the Wednesday 22nd of February ruling from the Supreme Court mean as far as the overall policy of the Naira redesign is concerned, and how will it likely hamper the conduct of the February 25 elections? Well, time will tell. That's the much we can take on today's edition of Political Spectrum. We'll be back again tomorrow. Join us again if you can for another fresh edition of the program. Coming up shortly is Business 360. Till then, enjoy the rest of the day's broadcast. From me, Raymond Ita, and the rest of the crew, thanks for watching and have yourselves a lovely day.